Hello, world, and welcome to Creating Light with Kelsey. Outlets are deciding to work today. I have a ring light. We have consistent lighting on my face, no natural lighting of going in and out, and that also being distracting. What I want to talk about today is this revelation I had with the number 7 and 7 years and healing in that way. And I just was getting curious about it. I'll probably do more digging and I can talk about it again at some other time. But if more information continues to unveil as I look into it, but when we are on this thing that is called the healing journey, we get to a point where we accept that it is ever evolving, but there's phases and levels to it. And like everything I've been realizing, well, obviously everything is always divinely timed and planned, but there seems to be some kind of mystical mathematical formula that plays out for most people statistically. When you experience the trauma, when you're able to face the trauma, healing from the trauma, and then cultivating and then being able to embody joy. That's kind of what landed for me this past week, of just a light bulb moment. And I'd like to just share my little spark of that. But first, I will say, I was on the phone with a friend the other day because he's pretty into like research and numerology and things. And I was like, hey, what's with the number 7? Like, what enlighten me on the number 7? Because I know some things, but it's more of from like a psychological sense. And I'm just going to read this fucking list, like without any other context. It's just bullet points of things that you could have that each have its own rabbit hole with the number 7. And he's big on like the origin of words too. So then the first thing that he was like, he said 7 rhymes with heaven, 7 chakras, 7 days of the week. Farmers go with the number 7 in the way that they think about growing cycles. 7-day menstrual cycle. 7 is a master number. 14 is usually when people hit puberty, and then 49 is usually around when women hit menopause. 147 is a Fibonacci sequence. 7th day, the god rested when creation was done, and it was about resting and observation. Then as far as the master numbers, he was saying that people recognize, 11, 22, and 33 in numerology are master numbers, but they don't always remember that 7 is also a master number. And it's a builder number, but it's about renewal. And what the number 7 briefly can mean in numerology is just about the depths and the seeking truth at the heart of things. It's about wisdom, curiosity, very reflective, system thinker, integrating various modalities, and an observer, as if like the number 7 is within your chart in any form of numerology sense. Then he was going on to say how 7 is a very light number and that it takes on a lot of light. It's open in the way that you even look at the structure of the number. And for the 7th chakra, it's the crown chakra, which is light and openness and about the ethers and downloading of that higher knowledge of different realms and frequencies. And it's a number that people associate with luck. And oftentimes with the jackpot, it's 777. So it evokes a high vibrational frequency. Which I knew the things with the crown chakra. And it's just interesting with the chakra system, as you go up higher and higher, it gets lighter in a sense because it's going up more into the ethereal realm. And the only way to do that is to have less density, less material, less matter. It is energy. So that just list is a rabbit hole in itself of like, if you don't know the value of 7, now you know a little bit. And I've heard before, I've heard different people I've heard people have different opinions on it being like a cyclical number and a metaphor for a cycle completion. But then other people can view the number 9 as the cycle completion. And when I think of the number 7 with what I had knew about it previously, is that it feels like more of the cycle of renewal versus the cycle of completion, that the number 9 makes more sense with the cycle of completion. And the only like example I can think of off the top of my head on that one is like it takes 9 months for the baby to be fully developed and be birthed out from one realm into the other. So before it is complete, if it came out at 7 months, it would be very premature and dangerous and have problems. It would not be as smooth sailing. My personal revelation was understanding, because I started to rewatch the somatic activated healing training videos, just because, I'm here to master a craft, and when you look at it once, it's not, you don't master it. You got to do it again and again and again and again. Like, I practice every day, but then there's a difference when you go back and listen to the lectures and stuff too. And one example, when it was talking about the topic of trauma that Sah D'Simone gave in a lecture, was how an orange seed, when planted, can take 7 years to bear fruit. And then relating that to trauma. And this part, I didn't know that about the orange tree, but I knew this part about trauma, that it can, like, statistically, there's plenty of research on it, that once a big T trauma event happens, it can take 7 years for a person to either even remember it, or be ready to face it, or have it be manifesting in ways in their life where it's actually starting to cause destruction or start to repeat if you're not facing it. And I have fucking seen that play out within myself and within my clients before I had even taken the SAW method training. And it's wild. Like, the big T traumas, that's why we have to be so delicate and gentle with ourselves on the healing journey. Your psyche is so smart. It will give you the information when you are strong enough to receive it. That's why it also can be dangerous if you're forcing all these plant medicines on yourself and you haven't done any work or faced any of your shit before. And then when you do that, you don't have a choice. You're getting bamboozled. And a lot of people have horrible experiences with it because they don't know how to integrate it, because they hadn't done any type of healing, grounding, integrative work beforehand. And it just rips them apart. Anyway, that's why plant medicine can be dangerous if not approached appropriately and with integrity to the medicine itself. That was a side rant. But yeah, you can't force this shit. It, like, massive trauma like that, especially if it's repetitive when you're growing up, things have to settle. A lot of times you have to be out of the traumatic environment for years before it's like, oh, okay, let's look at it. Or if you're repeating your own cycle in like your own traumatic childhood cycle in adult relationships now, then that will kind of force you to look at it too. And that's what I mean. Like, if you're not facing it, it will repeat. You will repeat it yourself, and then it can force you to look at it. But yeah, it can take about, on average, 7 years before it pops up. And back to the point of with my clients, I had seen clients for a while, and some certain traumas we just didn't touch. Like, I knew about them, but it wasn't my job to push, because I can tell when someone's ready to go there. And then when they do finally come forward and say, okay, I'm ready to look at this now, then I start asking questions as far as like years, so I can get an idea in my head. They don't have to like repeat the whole traumatic situation. I'm just getting little minimal facts for myself so I can have a better understanding to help them. And if I can track it back, and I'm like, oh, so that happened in my head. I'm like, that's happened 7 years ago. Checks out. And what's wild is when people think that they are ready and they come for help in that way, and then I try to go there, they retract, because it is actually not time yet. And you can't force that. You can't force it. But then they'll come back, and they build resilience in different areas of life and working through different hardships, routines, and self-care, building that just daily resilience. And then they can circle back around and be like, okay, I'm actually ready to do this now. And in the training video that Sah D'Simone was giving for somatic activated healers, he's like, this is like, everything is interconnected, and this is why this makes sense. Like, if it takes an orange seed 7 years to bear fruit, then it would take the planted seed of the traumatic incident, it would take 7 years for it to bear fruit within your life and wreaking havoc in your psyche, or to be in front of you to where you can actually like see it now and do something about it. And also on a physiological sense, I think I'm sure Bruce Lipton talks about it. I can't remember if I heard it just from him from the source or if I heard it from other people as well with lectures that I've listened to. It's for funsies, some random shit that I do. But they're talking about the cells within your body and how it only takes 7 years for each cell in your body to regenerate. So then that's what also kind of goes back to the list of the rabbit holes of the number 7 that we talked about, and how it's for me, like I noticed, it was like, oh, it feels like a renewal. It feels like a regenerative number, which aligns with this and how it takes 7 years for the body to regenerate all new cells. And that's also something that trauma practitioners will tell their patients is you eventually will have a body that a perpetrator has never touched. And that is just so empowering for everyone. Like if you think of that, okay, like back to the impermanence, like everything is temporary, everything is impermanent, that this body that had once was within severe trauma, that was once or like multiple times just violated and touched by people that had no right to do so, you will create a whole new you that has been untouched by that level of trauma physiologically. And it's just like, damn, we're so powerful. So thinking of that, of 7 years to renew, then 7 years for something to happen and then manifest. And then I had my huge ass light bulb moment. I started, because I'm on a journey of embodying joy now with where I'm at in my healing, because there's phases to everything. And if there's just this very long phase where I was in the darkness and I needed to learn what the fuck was in there and learn to see in the dark and navigate the depths, befriend everything, no longer be afraid with what was inside of my being. And then there was a point of like, okay, but is this it? Like I started to lose sight of how that is just one layer of existence, of being here and always doing the deep healing work and trauma and which like we fucking need that. But I was finding myself trying to permanently live there and being in the healing journey trap of this life that I want, these people that I want in my life, how I want to feel on a more consistent basis will never be here for me because I have so much work to do. Instead of it being a dance and an oscillation and just waves and flowing with it all, it was like, no, I'm here in the depths, and I gotta heal, I gotta work, I gotta keep looking, keep growing, and just be underground, And then this last year and a half or something, I started to question where the joy was. Like when is that gonna happen? Is that something, how do I do that? Like, I didn't even remember what it felt like anymore to bask in it on a consistent basis. I had lost sight of having fun, but I couldn't even see joy or fun because there was so much darkness that was in layers of trauma that needed my attention so they could back off and back away and be transmuted to coexisting in something different. But that's the paradox. Like you gotta do both. But I was hitting a point where I realized, I was like, okay, I've done it. I've done so much transformative work to where this is a way of being now, which means I get to experience joy. I have the space to experience joy. Then I was like, how long have we been in the depths, babe? How long? How long has it been? My sexual trauma came slamming to the surface, literally just fucking whacked me across the face and was like, by the way, you've never looked at this shit before. Now is time. Now it is the time. And that was in 2017. That was the fall of 2017. We're about to enter the fall of 2023. Let me do the math for ya. 7 years. 7 fucking years. Hey, editing Kelsey here, listening back to this motherfucking podcast episode. I did not do the math correctly. That's 6 years. 2017 to 2023, that's 6 years. That's good. I'm so proud of myself for landing this fucking point on the joy business and missing the mark ever so slightly. But it makes sense because this 6 years of like really being in the depths, like it's still been, which I think I'm about to land the point after this. So obviously keep listening, but I've been on the whole healing journey for like 9 years. And then the like trenches of the trauma has been actually 6 years, not 7, LOL. But I'm about to enter the 7th year. So that makes more sense of that we are really available for joy now. Like we're entering year 7 and making it a priority to exist in joy and not be so caught up in the depths, because 2023, year 6 of being in the trenches of my darkness, I was questioning joy of like, where the fuck is this at? But I was still in it, and I'll be talking about it again, or I'll be talking about it more next week. But I was definitely still in it in 2023 because I was taking my own course that I created that takes you in the trenches, because I've created something to where it doesn't have to be as long. We can not necessarily speed up the process, but be more efficient in it to do the work. So it may not take as long because you're doing the work that needs to be done. And I have like this fucking formula that brings you through the darkness, your own darkness. So, like, you know, I paved the path and I've got the steps to like take you through it. You still kind of determine how hard you go in the paint. But that's what I was doing this year. So technically I was still definitely in it, and now we're going to be entering 2024 soon. That will be year 7. And joy has shown itself. So still counts, kind of, you know. And again, on average, it can take up to 7 years for the trauma to present itself, which is what that still plays out of like, it took 14 years for me to face it after the original seed planting. And then it took just 6 years of me facing the trauma for joy to like really be here now. So we're close to the 7 and 7 business of healing being on its own cycle, and it taking years to do so, and giving yourself grace for that process. And you can't rush it. It is what it is. Okay, I rambled enough. Back to the episode. That was my light bulb moment. I was like, son of a bitch. I started looking at my sexual trauma. But the actual traumatic seed was initially planted. It was like, that was technically, wait a second. No. Okay. Sure. We're right on cue with this whole fucking analogy that I'm talking about on this podcast. I just did the math because I was like, oh fuck, am I putting my foot in my mouth when I'm talking about my own seed planting? And again, but that's on average. That's not every case. So for me, my initial seed planting before I started to look at it was 14 years The trauma happened 14 years prior, the first trauma, before I started looking at it. So 7-7, that is just, okay, yeah, you can't make that shit up. But then it was starting to happen regularly again in my adult life. And that's wild. That kind of makes sense. If it's like 7 years past, wasn't looking at it then, didn't have the tools because I was still a kid. 7 years after the initial trauma. So then 7 years again after that, when I was an adult, it just started to perpetuate. And the cycle was continuing of me just continuing to exist in the trauma that was the initial seed planting 14 years prior. Mind blown. And that was the wake up call. Then finally my psyche just was like regurgitated all of the trauma in 2017 and was like, here it is. It's time to look at it. And then when I started facing my trauma 7 years later, which is now, so I've been in the depths for 7 years. Wait, before I land that nugget, this is the longest climax build up to my fucking idea that I'm trying to get to. But there's just so many, there's layers. I gotta inform you. To play on to the 7 and 9 part, how the 7 is the regenerative cycle, the renewal cycle, but then 9 is this cycle of completion. I had actually started, if we want to count the full journey of the healing journey, I had started it 9 years ago, nine or 10 years ago. So that's the full completion of like, okay, we are done with the trenches. You got it. You are stronger than the trenches now because you've been down there so long, facing it and working with it, learning about it. You started the work, took a couple years, and then you dove in. You started to really, really face it 7 years ago. But the whole cycle of it has been 9 years of work, inner work. That's wild. So anyway, since I've been facing my trauma for 7 years, now I'm ready to embody joy. So I am super fucking curious to what the next 7 years is going to bring in just the natural cycles of it all. Like, you can't rush anything. It just is. Just flow with it. Let it all be. Let it all, and then it gets to be beautiful. It gets to be a beautiful experience that you can reflect on and have the wisdom to appreciate everything that went into it and how you showed up in life and how you existed. So quick little regroup. My orange seed was planted. Then it actually took me 14 years, 7 and 7, to face it. And then 7 years of facing the trauma. Now I can see joy. Now I have the tools and the capacity and the resilience and the openness to actually receive joy. And that's really why we do the work. Like, so many people don't actually want to do the inner work because it's scary, intimidating, and dense and a lot. It fucking is. I'm not like, I ain't gonna lie to you. That was a lot. 7 years. And if you're listening to this now and you're like 7 fucking years, okay, but listen, I'm 29 years old and I've been doing this for 7 years and I'm about to be 30 in a couple months. And now I'm over here like, I have all this space for joy. I already know that that's not going to just be my only existence, but that gets to be the main character now. Because why? Because I allowed darkness to be the main character for a phase, and it feels held and seen, and it's fucking taking a step back because it trusts that I will pay attention to it now. That is why. That is why there is so much room for joy. But it's like the seed of joy. Oh my God. The seed of joy is planted when you make the decision to start facing your trauma. And it's going to take time. It's going to take work, but it will grow and it will bear fruit. And however long it takes, your own divine journey, fruits of joy will be in your existence, in your being, and it'll be abundant. Because then once that fruit is there, that fruit holds so many other seeds, and like there's all the thing. That's why that's can be terrifying and scary, because it's the same with trauma. Like all these fruits, all these seeds, and where do I go? What the fuck? When you make the choice to look at it, you start planting other fruit trees. You're planting a seed for joy and for love and forgiveness, enlightenment, all of that, courage. But those seeds won't get planted. Those trees won't get planted until you decide to face the tree of trauma. I can't even. Like, do you understand the fucking miracle this is? Seven years. What a trip. So if you're ever hard on yourself and thinking that you should be quote unquote further along, or why is this certain life not here yet, or I don't know what story you got going on in your mind, but I can tell you I relate to a lot of that stuff. I understand. I can be very hard on myself. So this is just your gentle reminder, loving reminder that we are human, and our lovely human bodies and the density and the feeling sensations, that those are also dense because of that. And this physical matter that we exist in on Earth is slower moving as far as progression, completely breaking cycles within yourself, generational trauma, past lives trauma. Like that fucking takes time. Like why do we, if you believe in such things, why do we have so many lives and we keep coming back again and again? Because it takes time to learn the fucking lessons. Like already I'm over here, like I said, I'm 29, and it took 14 years for me to be like, oh, let's, like, holy fuck, what happened to me? Like, we gotta own this shit now. What am I left with after all of this turmoil? Like, holy fuck. It took 14 years after the initial incident to get to that point. Like, hello. And then when you look at it, it took half. I cut it in half of being able to face it for me to then be to a point of like, okay, what's this joy business? Like, let's make some room. Let's look. The door is open for joy to come in. Look, come here, love. Come here. Like, I already cut it in half. So that's what's also so cool is when you decide to face it and you build that strength, it does get better each time, and it gets better each life when you stay committed to it. But if you never face it, or if you do this half in, half out bullshit, or if you completely give up, it's not going to go anywhere. You're just going to have to do it again. And I am, thank you for the sexual traumas, is plural, initiation. Thank you for that. And I'm so good now. I am so good now. I've got it on that part where we're clearing this to where my soul doesn't have to experience the same initiation. And if kids are in the cards for me, I don't pass that lesson down, because that would be great. But yeah, that was my big revelation. 7 years. 7 years for the cells to regenerate, 7 years for trauma for the psyche to even begin to be ready to look at it when it's big trauma, big T trauma. And then I discovered it may be the thing that it also takes. I don't know if there's any data on this. I have no idea. I I'll just tell my friend to look at it. I don't look up that shit that much. But the other thing to tack on to this whole 7 years thing, it may take 7 years of you facing your stuff, depending on how complex your trauma is, before the veil is lifted for you to receive joy. And for that to be a constant within your reality. That could be that. But think, if there is research on that concept of like, okay, well, now what? Like how long does it take to look at it for other things to be happening? If it is the 7-year mark, if you knew that, because now you know it from my story. When you do it of like, okay, if I go all in on facing my shit and it's only going to take 7 years of really, really hard work, and then it's going to just be a part of life, and it's going to be swift movements of being able to hold and flow and manage the waves, then take 7 years of learning how to do that. Then you get to create whatever the fuck you want. You're ready to receive love and joy. You've already embodied forgiveness, because that's part of being in the trenches. Forgiveness is a gnarly lesson. When you do it, come on. 7 years, that ain't nothing. People fucking go to school for that long. If you go to undergrad and grad school to learn and do something that you love, when you want to learn about your depths and darkness to create a life that you love as a result, because you created the space to do so, 7 years. 7 fucking years. Anyone can do it. Dude, I'm so lit up thinking about that. Like, that's exciting. And I'm so excited for myself of what I get to experience now. And I've been saying like the last year, I was like, holy shit, I made it. I'm learning. I get to learn in the light now. Me and darkness are still homies, but now I get to learn in the light because I got the darkness in my back pocket all the time. It's welcome. It's here, And because of that level of acceptance, I get to learn in the light. And I mean, I'm not over here saying, I'm not naive in saying that I get to learn in the light forever, ever. But the shit before and learning within the unknown, but now I know when this other 7 years, because it could be cyclical in that way. I don't know what happens after. Now I'm in 7 years of this joy journey. What's the next 7 years? But you already went through the worst of it. And that's the reminder that is temporary. Life is wild, man. It is so ineffable. It's just beautiful and poetic. And like, when you have the capacity to know that and see that, you can fully experience the richness of it all. And it just gets to be great. Like, get curious about where that lands for you, the number 7, any of those rabbit holes, see where it takes you, and just reflecting on your life and your level of facing your stuff, facing your trauma, timelines, creating a timeline and seeing how that pans out, and see if this whole 7-year thing, if you are part of the statistic. If that lands for you. If it does, oh my gosh, I would love to hear it and like have a conversation, connect. Just hit me up on Instagram at creatinglight_, because this is just, I love this, obviously. But thank you for listening. And remember, when we see the light in ourselves, we create light in others.